This is the new Form Smart Goggles 2, the second version of Form swim goggles that automatically displays all of your lap and split information directly on the goggles itself, as well as things like structure workouts, and now also optical heart rate and open water swimming directional details. In this review, I'm going to dive through all this stuff, both from my own usage as well as my wife's usage. We've been using this over the last long while, actually, putting it through its paces to see how well it works both in the pool as well as outdoors in open water, including freezing my ass off in this 8 degrees Celsius of 46 degree Fahrenheit water to put some mileage in it. So with that, let's just get straight into it. These are the new goggles right here. This is the box that comes in, and this is the new carrying case that's also inside that box. This carrying case, as you can see right there, is still wet from my swim just a couple hours ago. It does include a bunch of additional nose bridges there as well. If you're to compare it to the existing goggles and existing carrying case in the past, you can see the previous one looked like a hot dog case. This one doesn't look like a hot dog case, but the goggles are what matters here and what's changed. So at first glance, these will seem very, very similar, but what you'll notice here is the size of the tech unit, basically this whole tech side on the V2 is a little bit smaller. They claim 15% smaller than the previous one. But more importantly, as you flip it over, this piece that extends out right there is an optical heart rate sensor right there. And it goes against essentially the temple of your head. And it basically provides heart rate during your swim. We'll get into accuracy later on, but they've made a ton of claims and a ton of testing and validation testing and all the fun stuff. As always, I'm gonna validate whether or not any of that's actually true. You'll also notice, so looking at these goggles, that the straps now extend out a little bit further than the past here, allowing you a bit of a tighter fit pulling in like this compared to the past. You can see that kind of plastic piece ended right there. One thing that's not changed though is the actual lens design itself. If you look at these two, they're virtually identical from a lens standpoint. That's the one piece that I wish had changed, to be honest. It's really my only criticism of either the V1 or the V2 goggles is the lens visibility here. And I'll dive into the nuances of that criticism a little bit later on in the indoor section. Now, from a battery life standpoint, the V2 version comes in at 14 hours. They say though, if you're in a pinch, 10 minutes of charging will get you up to about 2 hours of swim time, or 1 hour and like 52 minutes. This is the charging cable, pretty straightforward. Take said charging cable, put it on its side, and off you're rolling. From a pricing standpoint, the V1 pricing will be $179 going forward, and the V2 pricing will be $249 going forward. It sounds like both goggles are going to be there, with what is essentially the only hardware difference being that optical heart rate sensor there and some of the fit changes they've made as well. Hey, and a quick note, if you are finding this video interesting or useful, if you can just simply whack that like button at the bottom there or hit subscribe, it really does help with this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, going into the pool, the very first thing you're going to do is to power it on. You'll see there's two buttons right there. This is the power button. You power it on like this. You'll see a little green light show up right there. And the back button is essentially like a change your menu option kind of thing. Now, I'll caveat that it is very, very difficult for me to show you what it looks like in the goggles for all these different things. But in reality, it looks crystal clear. There's no like pixelation on the side of it. There's no like, you don't see those extra pixels that aren't lit up. It looks crystal clear. Now, the first thing you're gonna do is to go ahead and place the goggles on like this, however you want, so they're on, and then you'll go ahead and make sure the straps are tightened. And this is probably the area that you're gonna have to think about the most. Obviously, you're thinking about how awkward this is right now, but look, it's a swim goggle review. I don't know what you expected. And the reason is that this optical sensor here needs to essentially press against your temple. So it's actually back there a bit. I did a few swims initially where it just was not working at all from an optical heart rate sensor standpoint. So then they had me change two things. The first one was to put the swim cap on the outside, and the second one was to adjust this a little bit tighter. From there on out, it was perfect from an accuracy standpoint across the board in terms of reading my heart rate. What's cool is you'll actually see before you even start your swim whether or not it is have your heart rate shown. From there, you'll choose what type of workout you want to do. Use these buttons on the side here. Again, the front one just confirms things. The back one changes to something else. It's honestly as simple as that. So you'll choose either pool or open water, and then you'll choose what you want to do within the pool. So for example, in pool, my choices are my saved workouts, followed by my plan, followed by free swim. And then you just simply start swimming. It'll automatically track your laps for you. And then each time you get to the end of a length, it'll go ahead and basically show on the screen what your splits were for that particular length. It'll also show your stats for your interval as well as your total averages. And you can customize all of this using the Form app on your smartphone. Here are some screenshots of some of those data fields there. There's pretty much every data field you could ever want. They're all shown there. Like, I didn't have any problems finding data fields that I want. I've got no complaints on the stats. In fact, you quickly forget when you're swimming with this how nice it is to not have to look at your watch on each flip turn. Normally, if I'm swimming, I would basically push off the wall and I can glance at my watch at just the right moment to see the stats for the previous length or the interval, whatever it may be. As you pause between sets, it'll show you your previous set times and also give you a countdown timer if you have an interval timer on or a structured workout timer on. Now, as I mentioned, the visibility of the display inside of this is phenomenal. Perfect, zero complaints whatsoever about the display. Like, that part of it is spot on. It's been spot on for years. Everyone's pretty happy there. Where people aren't necessarily as happy, and not like in a horrible way, but just like in a I wish it were better way, is the visibility of the overall goggles themselves. By that I mean that when I'm swimming down the lane like this, you really don't have a ton of side visibility. You have just kind of like the front portion in it. And you can see why here based on this. On this side, you got this entire thing blocking your vision there. In this side, the way the optics are, it just doesn't have a lot of visibility there. For me personally, when I go to the pool and have to be there for an hour and a half, or 2 hours, I want to look at what's around me. I'm sorry, I'm just bored. So I like being able to see what's around me, or even just seeing when someone's either passing me or I'm trying to make a pass, where they are in relation to me. And it's not as easy on these goggles, and it's never been as easy on either these or the V1 goggles because they're exactly the same. The same is true for open water swimming as well. When I'm out open water swimming, especially in a beautiful location, I like to see what's around me. And you can't really do that as well with these goggles compared to most other goggles out in the market today. Once you're done with that particular swim, you've got your app here that will automatically sync the goggles into the app, and then from there out to things like Strava and Training Peaks where you can export out the file manually. If I look at that, I can scroll down to my swim from this afternoon, 2,250 meters there. That pinkish red line there is my heart rate across that entire workout. Pretty straightforward. You can see, across most of those interval sets, it'll slowly increase over time. Down below that, I got my total distance. I got my form details, head pitch, etc. This is some of the stuff I'll get into later on in the structural coaching bits. Going on down from there, I got my heart rate zones, swim breakdown from a time standpoint, a distance standpoint. I can go into the analytics for each one of these things. Again, there's tons of analytics here that you can dive into. Scrolling on back here, if I go to the top, I can look at here all of my sets. I can also switch over to lengths instead if I want to. I can see my rest sets, everything like that. The thing to remember here is I never touched the goggles at all once I started swimming. I'm just simply swimming and it's capturing everything. It is a very obedient little pair of goggles in the sense that it doesn't really care what I was supposed to do. It does, but it's just going to simply follow along and says, yep, okay, you're ignoring me. I'm going to track it anyways. And I appreciate that. That means from an accuracy standpoint of capturing all my metrics, it is always perfect. I've never had any issues. The one minor quirk is that I find that on the first length of something, of an interval, it's a little bit faster every time. And I don't think it's me. It always feels like it's a couple seconds faster than it should be. Like it's not capturing that initial 1.5 to 2 seconds on whatever that length is of an interval. After that, it's fine, but the very first one of a larger set seems a little bit off. And speaking of caveats, I'll note that I only swim freestyle. I don't do all the other strokes, so I'm a triathlete. I just do freestyle and doggy paddle, I guess. And so I can only vouch for the freestyle accuracy. It does correctly set everything as freestyle, which is good because that's what I'm swimming. So let's get into then structure workouts and then get into the open water swimming side of it. Now, on the structure workouts, this is where things get a little bit messy. And this is because Form requires a subscription for a number of features that are more than just simply swimming with the goggles. That subscription cost is $15 a month or $99 a year. You do, however, get the first 2 months free with the purchase of the goggles, so you can at least try it out for 2 months. In that subscription, here's what is included, just so we're all on the same page here. Number one is your form score. So that's the thing that you see right there, that score of 48 right there. Number two, SwimStraight. That's the open water swimming straight portion. Number three would be the 1,500 workouts that are in here. So if I tap on workouts and then choose all workouts, you can see I can scroll through literally not thousands, but 1,500, you know what that is, right? So I can scroll through a crap ton of workouts. To their credit, there is an enormous amount of workouts here to scroll through. Number three, it would be 45 different training plans. So I go back right here, I choose plans, I scroll down there, and you can see all these different plans right there. Tons and tons and tons of plans for volume, for technique, for triathlon. There's Ironman, Olympic distance, sprint, etc. Those are all in there. Note on those triathlon plans, they're just a swim portion, which is sort of complicated for triathletes because most triathletes, if you have a triathlon plan, are going to have swim, bike, run workouts for you. And so this would be kind of duplicate of that. You can decide which one you want to take. If you've already got a coach or coach workouts, one, getting them into this is sort of a pain. And then two, if you want to make custom workouts, you have to pay for the subscription, which to me seems wrong. So I guess that would be my second thing I don't like about this. I should be able to, if I buy these goggles, make manual custom workouts. End of discussion. just like every other device on the market today. Which then gets right into the fourth item that is only subscription-based, which is Training Peaks push integration. So in other words, from Training Peaks down to the goggles, that requires a subscription for Form, plus whatever Training Peaks thing that you have there. And that Form score item does include the head coach pieces, which is basically this portion here where you go into and work on different kind of coaching for your head technique and stuff. So that is something that does require a subscription as well. So with all those caveats out of the way, if you've got a subscription, then all you do is go to your workouts tab right there. You choose the workout you want. I'm just going to pick one right now. We're going to go with peaking because that sounds awesome. I choose that. I can look at it, see the details on it down below here, with the warm-up set, the preset, the main set, and so on. I tap Save the Goggles, and it'll simply sync them over. It's really, really easy, simple, and quick to do. Once I'm doing that particular workout, I will see the guidance in the workout telling me everything to do. So the sets, the intensity levels, how much is left for that particular set. When I get to the last length of that particular interval, it'll say that as well. It makes doing structure workouts super easy. You just simply do them. So with all that set for the indoor stuff, let's talk about the outdoor side of things. And there's really kind of two core options here. The first one is to go ahead and have the goggles by themselves, just doing their thing. And the second one is to pair it up with either a Garmin watch or an Apple Watch. So if you have a Apple Watch right here, you can pair it up with that and you get your distance and pace information using the GPS from your watch. Now, the thing to understand is these goggles have no GPS in them. Instead, they have a whole crap ton of other sensors in there to detect what you're doing and where you're going. But they don't know where you are on a vast open water scenario. Now, that said, the new feature in the V2 goggles is the SwimStraight feature. But the good news is that is also coming via firmware update to the V1 goggles. So if you got those, you're good to go there. And what that is essentially doing is giving you a compass heading. Not essentially, that is literally what it's doing. Now, before you start your open water swim with SwimStraight, you do need to do a calibration. However, it is like super easy. You have to do it every single time, but it takes just a couple seconds. You put your goggles on, it'll walk you through this and say, turn your head down to the right, boop, turn your head to the left, boop, and then spin yourself around. It's like doing the hokey pokey, and you're done. It's as simple as that, and you can start swimming. And that's basically just calibrating the compass and all that kind of stuff. As you're swimming along, you're going to sight like you would normally sight, hopefully in open water. And at that point, you're going to start seeing the compass on the top there. And that compass is just simply telling you where you're going. Now, Form recommends that you keep on sighting, and I would recommend that as well. In fact, after 20 seconds, if you don't sight, it'll tell you you should sight. It's kind of like when you take your hands off the wheel and then the car gets upset about it. Exact same thing. So the idea being here that you've sighted off something off in the distance. It could be a tower or a buoy or just a general direction in life. And you say, okay, that's where I'm going. And after a couple seconds, you see, oh, I'm going towards 175 degrees. Thus, in your head, you go, keep on going towards 175 degrees. It's frankly as simple as that. And you just keep on swimming. And if you start going to 160, it's like, okay, go back to 175. And you just keep on going. It is super cool when it comes to choppier water. So in cases where you have a lot of chop and the horizon or whatever things you're sighting off of disappears a lot, this is really, really useful. I really appreciate that because it makes it really easy just to focus on that initial lock, that initial compass thing that you're trying to aim towards. And for someone who has a relatively long history of swimming in pretty questionable open water swim scenarios, this is super useful to be able to go, yep, I haven't seen that tower in a while because of the waves, but I know I'm still going the right direction, so I'm just going to keep on going that direction. So I think this is super cool. Also, they just got a whole boatload of certifications to allow you to use this during races. Here's all those organizations right there. That is cool. That's, I think, hugely important for them as a company and for you if you want to use this during races. Okay, so what about the accuracy of this new optical heart rate sensor? After all, that's like the only feature really mostly compared to the previous one. Is it worth 70 or so bucks? Now, when it comes to validating that, that's been a little bit more fun. And the reason is because traditionally you'd use a chest strap, but as Form themselves points out, the problem with chest straps, especially on male swimmers where you don't have a swim top on, is that each time you push off the wall, that strap, depending on how fast you push, will generally go down to your waist. And that's true for me as well. It takes like, I would say 2 to 3 wall pushes, no matter how tight, no matter where I put that strap, for it to go down. That said, I just simply compared it to 2 different watches with optical heart rate, and I think you can see the accuracy just based on that alone. And if you look at some of these sets here, what you're seeing is pretty obvious, to be honest. Number one, the polar is just way off in left field, so let's set that aside. Number two, the Garmin and the Form are very, very close. However, you can see very clearly where the Garmin fails and the Form nails it, which is essentially most of those interval sets. Each time I'm doing the intervals, you tend to see a little bit of a ladder going up and up and up, or the heart rate goes up. But every once in a while, the Garmin's like, nah, I'm done with this. That's obviously a case where the Garmin's failing and the form is nailing it. In fact, as long as there was heart rate connectivity, the values coming out of this were very solid across the board. And I would say generally very accurate across the board. Again, it's really hard for me to triple validate this given limitations with the chest strap and stuff like that. But overall, I am pretty happy with the accuracy that I'm seeing on this. And I think it's definitely one of the best options you have today in terms of getting accurate data on this from an optical heart rate sensor. Okay, so where are we overall on the goggles? Well, I think if you do a lot of swimming, these are pretty awesome. Whether it's honestly the V2 version or the V1 version, they're both awesome from a swim standpoint, a data standpoint, a just having all the information at your head without dorking with your watches standpoint. People have been pretty happy with this. They've been out for 4 or 5 years now, and very few complaints. Where there does tend to be complaints is how Form deals with the subscription side of that. And Form has tried many different models over the years. They've tried goggles only, they've tried subscription only, they've tried a blend of the two, they've tried them all. And I've given them a hard time on the subscription side, as have a lot of other people. Nonetheless, despite me being pretty harsh on the subscription idea, Form as a company has tinkered with the no subscription to full subscription to every variant in between over the last whatever it's been, 5 years. They've tried them all. And it's hard for me to argue with that per se, because one, they've tried them all. And from a business standpoint, them staying afloat as a business, they kind of know it works. But I just wish that they would find a little bit more middle ground for people who don't really care about their training plans and don't care about their structured workouts, but still want to do their own structured workouts in some way, shape, or form. That's really where my main nitpicking is. Still, if you spend a lot of time in the pool, these are pretty sweet goggles. Overall, I'm pretty darn happy with them from a usability, from a tech standpoint, from a syncing to the app and getting up to Strava and all that kind of stuff. That all just works. With that, if you found this video interesting and useful, go ahead and give it a like at the bottom or subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.